Hey, what's up, Ontraport? In today's ClickFix, we're going to take a look at how to build this simple little mobile menu, so that way you can start to have the collapsed version of the menus on your mobile pages. It's Ken from ClickFix.io, just checking in. Know it's been a while, so I wanted to drop this video for you. But without further ado, let's jump right in with the tutorial. So as you can see here, let's get this iPhone out of the way. That's my iPhone being mirrored there. As you can see here, we are looking at a normal desktop page. This is one of the templates that we're going to be releasing here very soon, with some very interesting two-step functionality without a redirect, but we'll save that for another video. But as you can see here, we are looking at this normal menu uncollapsed version. When we jump into the actual editor, you're going to see that I actually have two of these set up. Move that so we can work with everything. What I actually did is I made two different header blocks. Now, the really cool thing is that we are on the verge of having something really interesting called global blocks being released. Not sure when the release date will be for that, or by the time you're watching this video, maybe it's even been released. But once that comes out, you're going to see that this is even more useful than it is right now. But I digress. So first thing you have to do in order to set this up is you got to make two separate blocks. Block number one, of course, is going to be just for the normal desktop stuff. Block number two is going to be mobile only. Now, for me, you can see how I set this up. What I decided to do is I wanted to make sure that the different icons were next to, or at least in this case, it's going to be underneath the logo. So I put them on their own row, and then I just did three different columns for the actual menu items themselves. You can set this up however you want. You'll have to play with it a little bit to see what kind of layouts you want to produce. Then from there, all these are just icons. All right, so when you click on this, if I can get it to click on this, this is just a normal icon. Right, and this is an icon. This one is, I believe, under Google, called Menu, and this other one is also, I believe, a Google icon called Close. All right, so I just selected those two icons, selected my colors, did all that kind of stuff. I'll tell you about the icon link here in a second. But once you have that set up, where the magic really happens is going to be in the custom code area. So don't pay attention to any of this. Let's just get this out of the way. This is for the two-step stuff. But we're going to talk about the top section here. Line number one is an actual piece of JavaScript that communicates with your free ClickFix.io account. So you're going to need one of those in order to make this work. After that, what we're looking at is the mobile menu commands. And all we did is we just made a series of hide elements and hide columns, and then we did some on-click triggers to set this up. Now, for me to show you where all these numbers and stuff come from, what we got to do first is we got to turn this on so we can actually see it on the desktop. So we're going to go to display settings here. We're going to say all devices just because. I'm going to go ahead and publish this again. Once that's done publishing, we'll come back to our page and refresh. Now, what I'm going to use here is an actual Chrome extension that it's also available inside of your free ClickFix.io account. That is just kind of helps you inspect these different items and the way Ontraport builds out its pages. And you need these numbers to put in the code that you see here in the custom code section. Right? So this number 51, the element ID, the column IDs and all that. The way we find those is by using this free plugin or this free extension that we built. So what we're going to look for first is we're going to look at the, let me turn this code off so you can actually see the columns as well. this again so you can actually see all of the different elements. All right, so now when we hit the extension, first thing we got to look at is okay, what are the things that need to be hidden and what are the things that need to be shown and when? So in order to find that out, we're going to first, remember I set this up as a bunch of different columns. All right, so these are individual columns. You can see that here in the inspector. It's called a column. If I wanted to, I could actually just target these individual elements, but I wanted to have some flexibility just in case later on I decide to put additional menu items in the same column for whatever reason or whatever. So I want to be able to hide everything that's in these actual individual columns themselves. So first thing I want to take note of is I want to say, okay, what are the column IDs here? All right. So now that we have the extension enabled, it shows me that, okay, so I need column 52, column 53, column 54, right? And that is what you see here at the beginning. What we're telling the system to do is to hide columns 52, 53, and 54. Now, this in hashtag, all these numbers here, that is the actual block ID. So if we come back here, we can say, now show me the block IDs, right? So that's this block ID here. And the reason that we add that is because we want to make sure that we're only hiding the columns that are in this specific block. Because if you've worked with Ontraport at all, or if you've kind of dove into the coding at all, you'll see that sometimes it repeats the numbers. So you can see that obviously this is column 1, but this is also column 1. So if I were to do a command that said hide column 1, it would hide my logo and it would also hide this this headline section here. And we don't want that. So by adding this in block XYZ, we can target a specific block. So that way we make sure that we're only hiding the elements or the columns in that particular block. It just makes it a little bit easier for you to set this up. So going back to the columns, right? We are looking at column 52, 53, 54. We want those to be hidden at the very start, which is what line number 5 says. Line number 4 is hide the element 51, and element 51, go to the element IDs. Element 51 is the close symbol, the X here. Now, why didn't I decide to use a hide column? Well, because both of these are in the same column, right? And so I wanted to be able to focus on an individual element within that same column, right? So line 4 hides the close symbol, which is hide element 51, and hide column number 52, 53, 54 on line number 5 hides the columns, right? Not these elements, but the actual entire columns themselves, right? And the next line has the anchor stuff. We're going to skip that. We're going to take a look here at the show element and hide element and show column stuff. All we're doing is we're saying that if this is true, if line number 6 is true, then what we're going to do is we're going to show element 51, which is, again was the close, the X symbol. We're going to hide element 50, which is the hamburger menu symbol, icon, I guess. And we're going to show the columns 52, 53, and 54, which were the columns that house our different menu items. Now this if anchor part is simply saying that if the anchor, which will be added to the end of the URL once we get in there, if that anchor is show, then it's going to show those. If it's hide, then of course it's going to do all of the things that are inside of the hide. And this whole anchor thing is a concept that a lot of people have a little bit of trouble with, but it's actually a pretty cool little, I don't know if it's a workaround or if Ontraport intended it to be this way, but you actually, when you're making a link, it doesn't matter if it's a link for an icon or a link for a text link or an image link or anything like that, or a button, most of the time on the URL, you don't have to put a full URL in here. What we've done is we've simply created an anchor link, right? And we've made sure that it says in the same window. And I say that basically when I click on this, and in this case it's the hamburger menu, when I click on the hamburger menu, I want it to add an anchor link to the current URL that says show.mobile, right? And when I do that, and by the same token, if I click on the close, I want it to be an anchor link that is hide.mobile, right? And when we're looking at the actual ClickFix code, what that does is it says if the anchor, right, if the end of the URL says show.mobile, then do this. Everything that's between the if anchor here and the if anchor there. If the anchor at the end of the URL says hide.mobile, then do this. Everything between the anchor here and here. So why don't I go ahead and enable this? And what we're going to see here is obviously we're going to be seeing it on the desktop, but I just want you to be able to see it with the URL, so that makes more sense. I'll go ahead and publish this again. All right, come back here. We're going to go ahead and refresh to get rid of the overlay and also to be able to show both. So now you can see that obviously this isn't lined up the way it would be because this is not a mobile screen. If we wanted to resize it, you can see that it does, of course, resize and collapse the way it is, but I'll show you that on the actual phone itself in a second here. But when I click on this, take a look at the URL at the top. If I click on it, all of a sudden it says show.mobile. And when it shows this as the URL, well then the columns that we said to hide in the beginning all of a sudden show up. And by the same token, if I click on this, now it's going to hide the mobile, and you can see that the columns all disappeared. And the way that looks on the phone is just like we saw at the very beginning. Right? And you can't see the actual URLs changing there, but you can see that it does, in fact, work the way we wanted it to on our device. So that's it. Last thing you would do here, of course, is to make sure that you come back and turn the display settings to mobile only, so that way when somebody loads it on the desktop, it does not show up. But other than that, purely a matter of figuring out what the targeting you want to do are, as far as if you're going to be targeting individual elements, columns, or entire blocks, and then assigning these anchor tags to the different buttons or links or whatever other user interaction you want to be happening on the page, and then deciding what you want to do by saying if the anchor is XYZ, then do 1, 2, 3, and making sure that you close the if anchor. I hope that helps. Obviously, this is one of those things where if you're working with it every day, it becomes very simple, but I'm always happy to help. So if you have any comments or questions or how things need to get set up, drop me a line in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to get those answered for you as soon as possible.